Welcome to this sacred conversation. I've only just met Krystal Hille recently, but my goodness, something about her just drew me in, and I really wanted her to share her story. So here she is, and I love her background. Look at all those beautiful colors, sort of very magical. And that's how I see Krystal with what she's doing. So I'm going to allow her to talk in a moment. But something happened to her at the age of 4 that then created an absence of safety and control that was repeated in not only her personal life, but in her business life. Welcome, Krystal, and thank you for being here and sharing the story of how you've got to where you are. I mean, I had a quick look: soul leadership, embodiment coach, ancient tantric practices, English lit, theatre studies. Wow.
Thank you so much for having me, Chantal. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, before I go into my story, because I am a publisher and I work with way showers every day on crafting their stories and really helping them to shine in the world and becoming, claiming their stories. I think I want to preface that we don't hear the story. You will not hear the story that I will share with you. You will hear your own story reflected back to you. And that's just what happens. Everyone always hears themselves in the story of the storyteller, in the story of the speaker. So consciously prefacing that, me sharing my story is an invitation for you as the listener to really dive into, where have I had these themes? Where have I experienced disempowerment? Where have I been burned? Or whatever it might be. Because my story then becomes the inspiration, the activation for you to get to know yourself through my lens, and therefore expand your perception, your awareness of who you are, and thereby we are raising the consciousness of the planet. And that is one of these beautiful side effects, and why I personally love storytelling, and why I love teaching storytelling and helping my clients share their stories to really understand themselves better in a deeper way, so that the readers can understand themselves in a deeper way too. So yes, my origin story, as I've identified it in this lifetime, leads me to and my mom was holding him in her arms and was feeding him with a bottle. Now, in order to make the bottle hot, she had an open water boiling kettle sitting on the coffee table. And for some reason, he managed to kick it and it splashed all over my chest. So I don't really remember the pain. I don't remember what I was thinking or feeling. I remember being on my bed, just curled up, waiting for her to drive me to the hospital. I think that's one of the memories I have. And then I remember being in a hospital for 10 days naked in isolation, because there was danger of infection. And the bell didn't work, so I couldn't call the nurses. I was wetting my bed, which I got told off about. I could just feel her decision in that moment, as I later kind of unpacked, that I wasn't going to burden her with my pain as well. So where do I put my pain? I kind of just suppress it. And so that emotional suppression started at that age, but it had to come out somehow. So the way it came out was through fear. Like coming out of hospital afterwards, I had lost track. I was scared that the giants would drag me down the toilet, or that the wind would, the leaves would kind of crash our house. I mean, I was scared of absolutely everything, and obviously had nightmares as well. And yeah, it really, looking back at it, this was the disempowerment, when I really bring it down. Okay, what is my void? Dr. John DeMartini talks about our voids create our values.
Yes.
And so my void was safety. I didn't feel safe, even though I was growing up in a really safe, beautiful household. My dad was the church minister of our community. So on the outside, like, there was safety, there was holding, there was a functional, on the surface, there was a functional relationship between a functional household. But underneath that, because of that event, there was no safety. And so my journey, and I really believe that we activate things in this lifetime that we haven't resolved from past lives. Because, I'm in a previous incarnation before becoming a publisher, I used to do past life regressions with clients, and I still do sometimes if they come into my life. But I don't actively advertise, but if somebody really resonates with me saying, Krystal, I think you're the one, I had a dream about you, I think you're the one who can help me do my next step, I always say yes. And I have a beautiful client like that at the moment. So yeah, I do believe this disempowerment comes from lifetimes ago as well. Like the witch hunts, being burned for our truth and not feeling safe and feeling disempowered when we stand in our power, in our essence, in our zone of genius. So it just needed to be activated in this lifetime in order to be overcome. So I spent the next 45 years, or almost 45 years, reclaiming my power.
Yes.
And I have numerous stories, personal stories of how that happened, of relationships breaking up, and each one helping me reclaim a piece of power. And in fact, it was always the relationships breaking up, not the relationships I would come into, that helped me reclaim the power, because it's in the conflict against, and deeper into our courage to rely on and self-reliance. And so for me, that always happened through relationships.
Just before you go on, because I've lost you a little bit there, just come back, the relationship breaking up, because that was really important. It was the relationship breaking up and the conflict. Can you just repeat that again? Because we just lost you for a moment.
Oh, okay. So in my journey, the empowerment came always as a result of a relationship breakup.
Yes.
Not moving into a new relationship when it was all lovely and nice, but when there was conflict. And it's like when we experience conflict in our lives, we get shown who we really are. In the way we respond to that, because that is always a choice.
Yeah, and I really like what you're saying, and something what I'm loving hearing is that when, and I'd like you then to embellish that if it feels comfortable, is when you're supporting women or men, I don't know if you work with men too, so when you're supporting people to write their story and things get triggered, you come from a beautiful place of empathy and understanding. Is there then room, do sometimes people come, like you said, you did past life regressions, do you bring that in, or you just stay unless someone asks you? Do you offer that? Because I think that would be a beautiful journey, when you're writing your story, because I'm sure stuff comes up for everyone.
Yeah, stuff comes up all the time. And yes, I do offer that. But it's, so for my VIP clients, it's included in their package if they want that. I mean, they get 3 sessions with me that they can use in whichever way they choose. They can choose to create their launch strategy, or they can use it to really help have in-depth support writing their chapter, if that's something they feel like they would love, and have a really close collaboration around that. Or they can use it to go into, inner child work, past life regressions. That fear of syndrome comes up a lot as well. Like, oh my God, what will people think of my story? Who am I to share my story? All of that will be addressed. And for those who are not VIP, I actually have some master classes in my content library that are guided journeys that take people into their childhood to release whatever might be coming up.
Oh, I'm just going to take a moment. That's so beautiful. I think it's such a beautiful thing. I just feel that what I'm seeing is that beautiful holding space for people to be able to really come and share their journey. Because there is a calling to do that, isn't there? There's a calling that you want to, yet you feel scared. So there's this, as you're coming back to this, there's this conflict, isn't there? There's this sort of do I, don't I? And from what I'm hearing is you do this beautiful, holding space to allow them to flow through.
Yes, exactly. Because what I love about where I've landed professionally after having been a theatre director and a life coach, tantra teacher, and now publishing, is that I'm bringing all of that into the publishing, and I've now blended those modalities. So I'm creating a really unique, sacred space in which people can really feel safe. They know I've got their back. They know they don't just get a chapter guide thrown at them saying, here, write your chapter and we'll do a grammatical edit. They actually get feedback on what they've written. And I feel for myself when somebody takes the time to give me feedback and makes suggestions of where I might have gotten lost in my story, or where I've maybe been too much in the teaching role. I really value that kind of feedback, so that I know whatever I'm putting out there really, really represents me in my best light, because we all have blind spots. We get, especially if we're not used to writing, and I'm so aware of that. So I really make that a priority and a focus in all of the book containers that people come into, be that a multi-author book or a solo book.
Oh, again, I just feel, because one day I know I'd like to write a book. And I started years ago on
Yeah,
my
it's
own.
a feeling of safety, right?
Exactly. That's exactly. Feeling of safety. I'm going to say it again, being held. Not only that, what I feel you're offering, which I think is starting to change in the world, particularly with coaches, is not just, oh, here it is, just do it. It's you are saying, here it is, and this is how I'm going to support you. There's such value in that, because a person who has gone through trauma, which I'm sure you've experienced too, and I know for me, wants to be held, heard, witnessed, empathy, understanding, all those things. So you're creating a beautiful container where you hold that, but you also have your own boundaries. You have your own story. You are showing there's that beautiful reciprocity. Can you say it for me, please? Because I'm that
reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Thank you. That's one. I don't know why I even tried to say that, because I never can. I've been for years. I haven't been able to say that, and that's what I'm feeling here. And that's what also you're giving me here, and the audience, is that beautiful reciprocity, sharing. Holding
Yes.
space.
And the other thing, talking about reciprocity, is that I hold group containers. So we have weekly meetings, and we talk about, what's coming up for you. What breakthroughs have you had? What are you struggling with this week? And, the group, as you know, when we come together in group and we're sharing from that real deep, authentic place, my breakthrough inspires your breakthrough just by witnessing me or hearing me, or my challenge will validate you in your struggles. And therefore heal it. It's so, I just love group work, and it's so powerful. And with all the background and the workshops that I've run, I'm a natural space holder for this kind of work, and I get it. I think one of the biggest compliments I've once received, without even realizing it at the time, was when I was teaching at a drama school, and it was an opera school, and I was putting on their end of year opera performance show, and one of the local drama teachers was saying to me, Krystal, you have this ability to make everyone's personality shine on stage. It's almost like I was bringing out more of who they are and blending it with the character, but it was them in their full expression almost. And I didn't realize that was we don't know what our zone of genius is until somebody reflects it back to us. But reflecting on my life now, and this is what I've always done. I'm the one who I'm the mirror who can activate your highest potential and bring it to the surface. And so that's what I do in the storytelling with when people come into my publishing container.
Again, love it. Again, what I'm loving it, because when we are in doubt and have been through experiences like you have and I have been too, you feel not only unsafe but unsure. Is this worth telling? Someone's had it worse than me, so we compare, or something else. I'm not of value. And what you're doing is showing a value. And I love that. So you call it group work. I use circle work, but it's basically the same.
Yes.
It's coming back to that original way of women sitting in circle with that trust, to be able to have your breakthrough will inspire someone else's. And that, as you said, it has that beautiful rippling effect. You get validated, which you may not have been validated before, or in a whole different way. And then that gives the courage, from what you're saying, to then go, you know what, I can write this story.
Yes.
Because it'll touch someone. It will touch someone.
Absolutely. Exactly. Especially when we share a story and then tease out the universal theme of that story. Just like I've shared my story about the burns. So what? She got burned when she was a child. Oh, that must have been terrible. But now I've teased out, it's about empowerment and disempowerment. It's about trust and control, and how I've had these themes experienced in my life. Now suddenly you can relate to it. What's my story around trust and control? What's my story about where have I been disempowered in this life? Because that's something that I needed to learn. We all all the way showers, all the spiritual, anybody who's spiritual, whatever we mean by that, anybody who feels they're here to make a difference, they have a higher purpose, they're here to help in this transition that we're finding ourselves in right now. We've all been burned at the stake one way or another. We all carry the scars and the traumas of that in our DNA. And it's in this lifetime, I believe, that is to be released and healed. And that is why, especially in the last 2 years, so many of us have had the worst challenges that we've ever faced in order to show us, what are we made of? Can we rise above that? Can we observe it from, can we be the observer of our circumstances and see it for what it's here to teach us?
Yes.
Can we learn to surrender? Can we learn to trust in the divine, even there's nothing tangible here? Will we finally learn the lesson?
Yes. Yes. I love it. And I think learn the lesson. What I'm hearing as well is that sometimes you need a starting point, and sometimes that's the story. So it's your story. Because otherwise, I know from my own experience, you don't know where to start. So I suppose in a way, so again, let's flesh this out. Where would you start? So how would you, so if someone comes to you like myself and say, look, I'd love to share my story, but I don't know where to start. How would you start? My sense is what came through to me, oh, do I have to start sharing my story? And then you tease out the universal theme. Again, how is this explored?
So I actually did a workshop on this for a group the other day. And so the way I explore it is our voids create our values.
Okay.
So we tease it down to, for me, it's empowerment. For somebody else, it might be love.
Okay.
Abandonment, connection. So we find that those two words, what's the absence and what is it therefore that's important to us? Then we trace that back to the very first time we can remember in this lifetime, which becomes our origin story.
Okay. Yes.
And so that's where you start. That's how you get your theme. And of course, if you want to write about something else, that's not your core, but why would you? Like, we all want to write about the thing that underpins our mission as to why we're here.
Mm. Mm. But what I'm thinking as well is, that's come to mind, two things, like DeMartini is always saying, where someone is not liking you, someone is. I always remember his work because, that's what he says. And I love what you've done. You're teasing out this versus that, so like the opposites, which I love. But also what I'm finding is, and you've just touched on it. So again, let's talk about this. You might start off here, but end up completely here.
Yes.
So I presume I'm sure you create space for that to happen.
Definitely. So what often happens is there's a first draft and a second draft. And the first draft, I always encourage my contributors to just write. You kind of know your framework, but it's about just getting it all out of the head. So we're just, without censoring, without stopping, just write. Because when we do that, we actually access that higher wisdom, and we suddenly find things that come through us that we didn't expect, but they open up new things. And then you look at, okay, so what have I got here? There's like in the multi-author books, currently we're working on Beyond Certainty. So the theme is certainty or uncertainty. And the next one will be conditioning. So we're looking at our life through the lens of the theme of the book. How have I been conditioned? Where have I experienced lack of safety? Or the book that's recently come out is Inspired Connections. What meaning have inspired connections have it had in my life? So we're always looking, like these book titles become like the lens through which we investigate our biography, and that can open up even new realizations. And that can take us on a tangent. And then we write, and then we look at what we've got, and then we might bring it back. Like, okay, we've gone everywhere. So what do I want to do with this now? We're going to go back and bring it into some kind of system or structure.
I like that. So two things I'm going to say, everyone when you're listening, we will have the links to how you can contact Krystal or find out how to get hold of the books. Because I'm sure, again, what I'm thinking is, because you're having lovely variety, that one will jump out. I suppose people who purchase it will go, oh, that's where I need to connect right now. you know, and later you might do another one. That's what I'm loving too, that you're giving people the possibility of when they read it, how to open themselves up too.
Yes. And, you know, also when they write it, like I was just doing an author spotlight with one of my clients, and she was saying to me, I thought I was just going to write about her. She's a safety instructor, but she happens to write in a book called Inspired Connections. So initially she wasn't writing much about the connection part, but she's, in her mind, she was going to just write about safety. And so then through me bringing in the connection part into it and saying, like, how do they relate? It opened up a whole new way for her that's now radically changed the way she's training her content, which has, by bringing in more stories, by helping her identify why she's passionate about teaching about safety.
Yeah.
You know, this comes back to the origin story, because that's what we tease out in these journeys, which has now, because the new teaching style that incorporates more stories, she's got referrals from that, and she's now added 50K to her business just because she was in the book, because she's reflected. And that's, I mean, that I just love, I love that because it helps us understand ourselves in a deeper way.
It does, deeper. And the other word that came to mind as you were talking is also expansive. Because we, depending on our stories and our history, so many of us get sort of, we don't realize we're still playing small, tight, you know, we don't understand that we are perhaps fear driven or anxiety driven. So what you're doing, and I love this story you've just shared, you've just, okay, she was safety, right? That's how it was going to be, safety. And, you know, yet here, suddenly you've given her this whole sense of creativity. Wow, how can I take this out? How can I, you know, and look what's happened. How marvelous is that, Krystal?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I always say transformation for professional expansion.
Say that again, because we just say that again. What was that last bit you said?
Personal transformation, where we're digging into our personal story and we're actually realizing that maybe there's still pockets of shame inside of us that are being revealed. Personal transformation for professional expansion.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Fantastic. Oh, I hope whoever's watching this, that, you know, any questions, any comments, or like any ahas, because I seem to be having quite a lot of little ahas, and I'm trying to hold back. So let's face it, Krystal, it's your conversation. I mean, I know it's ours, but I'm just sitting here going, yes, yes, yes. I'm just loving this, you know, because the other thing that I'm loving, as I've also been opening up, is trusting our intuition, just allowing it to start flowing through, that we all have something beautiful to share with the world. And we do it all in our own way, because some people like yourself, you're doing it, you're the publisher, you're out there. Someone might just want to do it through the story because they still want to be a little bit more, not invisible, but a little bit of a, you know, so you're giving people the opportunity to share as much as they want to, because someone might then go and do their own book. Has that happened for you?
Yes, it has. It has. It's like the writing a chapter makes them realize how much they actually have to say, and that there's space for a whole book, or, you know, room for a whole book to write, and they have the content to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. So they've gone. So what, again, another container, story, safety of doing it in a multi-author, to then safely being able to then open it up into this whole, so, you know, you can go, oh my gosh, I've just got this beautiful vision, you know.
Exactly. You're up leveling and preparing the nervous system to,
that's it,
at each step of the way. Yeah.
Love, yes, and preparing the nervous system. I love that, because it is becoming that expansion, isn't it? And then you know that you have the capacity to hold yourself, so the writer can hold themselves in that space as well. So you hold them while they're writing it, but then once it goes out into the world, it's there, it's the world's, but they can still hold their own space with that and feel proud. No doubt, feel proud.
Absolutely.
Scared, excited, proud, like, oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
It is, because I remember years ago when I was training for aromatherapy kinesiology, and this woman had written a book. What was it? Blossoming Hearts. It was a beautiful book. And I remember her saying she got to a point where she was getting ready to put it out into the world, into the public, and she got a clear message, was that once she handed it over, it then belonged to the world, no longer to her. That stuck with me 25 years later.
I had a contributor sharing something similar. You know, she, for the first time, she dove into her traumatic experiences as a child and sexual abuse, and that was the origin story for her now doing somatic dance. And she said that when she had written it and now released it, and it was witnessed by the world, it was like it had been lifted off her shoulders. She didn't have to carry that story anymore, and it was now she released it back into the universe. And so that again was just such a beautiful, so it's like uplifting and releasing and lightening, because when we don't share our story, and we keep a little bit of shame around it, shame can't exist only exists in a vacuum, but it can't exist when you share it. It can't dissipate. So that's where the personal transformation comes in.
Yes, and I like that. And also, people then can take responsibility for how they respond. So it's, again, how do you let go? Because there could be, nowadays, there could easily be people who'll be naysayers or want to put you down or whatever. So it's knowing that that's then, how do you separate yourself from, it's the public's now, their responsibility. How do you, no, that's good. How do you guide people to know if that were to happen? Do you actually prepare them for it potentially, or do you just trust? Or how would you support someone if that were to happen?
It's a really good point, and everything, again, it comes back to what I said in the very beginning. People don't hear your story, they hear their story.
Yes.
And so they're actually reacting to their story when they're reading your story. So if you know that whatever response or reaction they have has nothing to do with you, and of course we don't, as long as, in my containers, I don't, everybody writes from a very not enlightened, but from a very processed, they have processed their emotions, they've processed their feelings, so they're not, there's no blame in a book. It's so long as there's no blame, then nothing, if blame comes back, then we know it's not the authors, it's the contributor, it's the readers. And then this is about, well, this is how you're reading it. This is your story. I have my story, and everybody will read it in a different way. And we can't control how somebody responds. So, and just to being, and I guess that in terms of preparations, that to make people aware this can happen. Your family may not champion you for having written a book because you're leaving the pack. You're suddenly going beyond what they see you should be doing. And so they will not support you. They will not celebrate you. And you have, definitely preparing them to be okay with that.
And I think you mentioned earlier something also about
but your friends will, your soul tribe will.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And knowing how to support your own nervous system. Because I had something happen on Insight Timer that was such a surprise. I didn't expect it. And unfortunately, I had the group that I, with the teacher and the group in there. So I went back and said, right, how do, because it triggered me in so many ways, even though I had to learn now what's mine, what's theirs. How do I do this? I did go back to Insight Time and say, look, I'd like support because I want to be able to hold space for this person. Yet I've also got to hold space for me and others. So it was a very confronting and challenging experience. Yet it was, again, like you're coming back to, it was transforming and expansion, and gave me space to look at what was mine, what was theirs, how am I going to handle this? And again, with love and compassion for all involved, because particularly with you, it's Insight Timer. This is more than just me and this person. This is it's a whole, I'm on their platform. It's not my platform. So again, it's learning how to do that. So I just, thank you, Krystal. Thank you. This has been a beautiful conversation of, I just feel so much love and joy and excitement of who you are and what you offer, and bringing it all together. So sort of coming to a little bit the end, what is one last message would you love to give people who are listening?
I always come back to one quote by Maya Angelou, and she said, "There's no greater agony than keeping an untold story inside of you."
Yes.
Because it kind of just takes so much energy to keep it in, whereas when it's released and when we're writing it, then there is we're tapping back into the creative flow. Otherwise, we're fighting the creative flow.
Yes.
So it's like, if you have a story, if the universe or if your higher self or whatever you call it has tapped you on the shoulder saying, hey, you've got to write a book, you've got to share your story, people need to know about this because you've got wisdom to share. Don't let your fears get in the way. Don't let convenience, or I don't have the time, or I don't know how to write. None of that matters. There's always a way we can find, because we only have this now moment. And to really bring that point home, I had a contributor, Barbara, who was in one of my books, and we had just done the developmental editing. Her chapter was ready, it was signed off, and then she passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. So we never know. When we say, I'll do it next year, there's only the now. And this is not to lead with fear, but this is to just remind myself and everyone here, and myself included, that we only have the now, and not to live for the future, but to live for right here and right now.
And that is so true. Thank you. So anyone who even has a tiny little inkling, reach out. Check out, we're going to put them down in the descriptions. How you can contact Krystal. Just go and have a look and find out. At least the seed's been planted, and allow that to grow. Allow that to grow. And feel into it. You know, really feel into what you want to say and do. And yes, we all have a story. We all have a story. Like you said, and I love that. There's no greater agony than leaving an untold story. What was it?
Trapped inside of you.
Trapped inside of you. Thank you. Thank you, Krystal. I really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Any comments, any queries, one of us will get back to you. And just really allow yourself, just as we're finishing, and I know Krystal has given us a beautiful way, just tune into your hearts right now, which we'll do with you. Take a nice deep breath in. Just drop into your body. How are you feeling now about potentially writing your story? When you're ready, just coming back. And I'm just going to leave you all on that note for you to explore, reflect on, and reach out. Namaste. Thank you, Krystal. Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.